In combat, a soldier's weapon is more than steel and wood. It becomes an extension of survival, a promise that when the moment comes, it will work. But what happens when that promise is broken? Not once, not twice, but again and again in the mud and chaos of the worst war the world had ever seen. This is the story of a weapon that shattered trust. The Western Front, 1916. Trench warfare has turned Europe into a graveyard. Millions of men crouch in the mud, waiting for orders to climb over the top and walk into machine gun fire. The machine gun rules the battlefield. It makes attacks suicidal. It makes defense almost absolute. Every army knows this. Every army is desperate for a solution. The answer, they believe, is the automatic rifle. A weapon light enough for one man to carry, powerful enough to lay down suppressive fire, mobile enough to move with an attack. France takes the lead. In 1915, they introduced the Chauchat. On paper, it looks like exactly what the war needs. It weighs less than 20 pounds. It fires the standard French 8mm level cartridge. It can be carried by a single soldier and fired from the shoulder or the hip. Most importantly, it can be made quickly. France is bleeding men and metal. They need thousands of automatic rifles, and they need them now. The Chauchat is designed for mass production, simple parts, minimal machining. Factories that have never made weapons before can turn them out by the hundreds. By the end of the war, over 250,000 will be manufactured. It becomes the most widely produced automatic rifle of World War I. But numbers mean nothing if the weapon doesn't work. The problems start almost immediately. The Chauchat has a distinctive half-moon magazine. It curves downward, holding 20 rounds in a long crescent shape, and it has large openings cut into the sides. The idea is simple. The magazine is easier to manufacture. Soldiers can see how many rounds are left. The openings reduce weight, but those openings become a fatal flaw. The trenches are not clean. They are filled with mud, dust, dirt, and water. Soldiers crawl through filth. They dive into shell holes. They fight in rain and snow. And all of that gets into the magazine. When dirt clogs the mechanism, the gun jams. The bolt fails to cycle. The cartridge fails to feed. The weapon stops. In the middle of a firefight, it simply stops. A jam is not a minor inconvenience. When a soldier fires a Chauchat and it jams, the enemy is still shooting. The attack is still happening. The clock is still running. He has seconds to clear it, strip the magazine, check the chamber, work the bolt, load again. If he can't fix it, he's carrying dead weight. If his squad is relying on him for covering fire, they're exposed. If the enemy is advancing, he has no way to stop them. A weapon that jams is worse than no weapon at all. It gives false confidence. It makes promises it cannot keep. The Chauchat's problems go deeper than the magazine. Wartime production is rushed. Quality control is inconsistent. Parts from different factories don't always fit together properly. The long recoil system, while mechanically simple, is sensitive to tolerances. When parts are even slightly out of spec, the entire action can fail. The bipod is flimsy. The stock cracks under sustained use. The barrel overheats quickly and cannot be easily replaced. French soldiers learn to work around these issues. They clean the weapon obsessively. They avoid dragging it through the worst mud. They carry spare parts. But trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. When the United States enters the war in 1917, they arrive without enough automatic rifles. France offers to supply them with Chauchats. American forces accept, but with a modification. The French version fires the 8mm Liebel cartridge. The Americans want it rechambered for their standard .30-06 Springfield round. It's a reasonable request. Logistics are simpler when ammunition is standardized, but the modification is a disaster. The .30-06 cartridge is more powerful. It generates higher pressures. The Chauchat's action, already delicate, cannot handle it reliably. The American version jams even more frequently than the French original. American soldiers hate it. They call it the Chauchat, a mocking attempt at the French pronunciation. They call it worse things than that. Reports from the front describe men abandoning the weapon entirely. Some units refuse to carry it. Others take captured German light machine guns instead. In one recorded incident, soldiers throw their Chauchats into a river rather than carry them into battle. It's not cowardice, it's not laziness. It's the calculation of men who know their lives depend on their equipment. A jammed rifle is worse than no rifle. A weapon you cannot trust will get you killed. Some soldiers try to make it work. They modify the magazines, stuffing cloth into the openings to keep dirt out. They file down parts that don't fit. They carry extra springs and firing pins, but field modifications can only do so much. The fundamental design is flawed. The manufacturing is inconsistent. The rechambering for .30-06 introduces problems that cannot be fixed in a trench. By 1918, American commanders are actively seeking replacements. The Browning automatic rifle is being rushed into production. When it arrives, units equipped with the BAR report dramatically improved performance. The Chauchat is quietly phased out. It would be easy to call the Chauchat a failure of engineering. It would be easy to blame the designers for incompetence, but the reality is more complicated. France in 1915 is not designing weapons in peacetime. They are bleeding to death. They need automatic rifles, and they need them immediately. The Chauchat is not the result of stupidity. It's the result of desperation. The open magazine is not a mistake. It's a compromise. Easier to produce, lighter to carry, cheaper to manufacture. The poor quality control is not laziness. It's the consequence of wartime industry, where every factory is running at maximum capacity and skilled workers are at the front. The Chauchat is what happens when war demands the impossible. But understanding why it failed does not change what it did to the men who carried it. Soldiers do not care about production timelines. They do not care about budget constraints. They care about one thing: will this weapon work when I need it? The Chauchat's answer, too often, was no, and that breaks something fundamental. A soldier must believe that his equipment will function. That belief is not optional. It is survival. When a weapon fails, it does not just fail mechanically. It fails emotionally. It erodes confidence. It introduces doubt. And doubt in combat is deadly. After the war, the Chauchat disappears quickly. Nations that used it scrap their stockpiles. Veterans do not speak of it fondly. Military historians classify it as one of the worst firearms ever issued in large numbers. But calling it the worst misses the point. The Chauchat is not a story about bad design. It's a story about trust. In war, innovation means nothing if it cannot be relied upon. A brilliant weapon that jams is worthless. A simple weapon that works is priceless. Soldiers remember the rifles that saved them. They remember the ones that failed them. The Chauchat is remembered because it failed when it mattered most. Not because the men who designed it were foolish, not because the men who carried it were weak, but because in the end Survival depends on a promise that when the trigger is pulled, the weapon will fire. The Chauchat could not keep that promise, and the soldiers never forgave it.